I heard him say, Satan is my savior. And when I saw him, my first thought was that he was like a guardian angel, but on the negative end of things, he was watching me. Then I closed my eyes and I opened them again, and he was gone.
Welcome back, Something Paranormal fam. I just wanted to start out by letting you all know that I am grateful to be here, and I have an amazing guest on this episode that I can't wait to share with you today. Now, the last week has been a challenge for me personally. As I mentioned in the last episode, I am coming off some medication that has previously served its purpose with helping me battle addiction, and I am going through some withdrawals. So it's been a challenge, but I am just focusing on, I've come this far and I just need to make it a few more weeks, and then this will be a closed chapter in my story. But again, putting out this podcast, working with people, interviewing new people, making new friends, it's really self-care for me, and it just really brightens my mood and it helps me deal with the physical struggles that I've been going through. So I just wanted to start out by bringing some attention to the stats like I always do. And we've got a total of 445 downloads and 16 countries in total and 98 cities. And some newer locations fairly recently would be San Francisco, California, Lakewood Ranch, Florida, Lenoir, North Carolina, and Exmouth, Devon. So again, I just appreciate every single one of you that are tuning in, and I'm just really excited to continue interviewing and meeting new like-minded people to share firsthand accounts of the supernatural and unexplainable, to provide answers for people who are curious like me. So this week we have a very special guest. Her name is Maya Zahira, and she is a psychic and author and spiritual teacher. So stay tuned for the chat with Maya. So for the listener, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Like, who is Maya?
Yeah. So hi to everybody out there in listener land. My name's Maya Zahira, and I will just start off talking a little bit about what I'm doing right now, and then I'll go back to a little bit more about background. So I call myself a specialist in psychic protection because I literally eat, sleep, and breathe all things psychic protection. It's become my life's work in the last several years. I do videos on it. I have a YouTube channel, Psychic Protection Sanctuary, a free Facebook group for the community, so that everybody, no matter what their financial situation is, can get at least some kind of support. And then I have a mentoring program where I work with a group of students, people who are needing more guidance than just a free group. So that's what I do now. And I'm also an author. I'm working on my third book. All of the books are about psychic protection, different aspects of psychic protection. So just kind of rewinding all the way back, I was a really spiritual child, and I was having psychic experiences even when I was little. I was raised Catholic, and I stepped out of the Catholic box when I was in my 20s, but being raised Catholic, I had a lot of mystical experiences, and I didn't know what an aura was, but I used to be able to see the aura of one of the priests at church. I would always see this light around him, not the other priests, just this one. And everybody would talk about how special this priest was. So there was definitely something about his energy. Then I really had a major spiritual awakening when I was a teenager. I started having spiritual experiences like visions and premonition dreams. I also had a lot of like standard psychic experiences where I would hear what my friend was going to say before they would say it. I would know that I was going to see so and so person the next day, and I would run into them at like a sports game or something. So I would know things for no apparent reason. The visions that I had were very religious in nature. So I had some visions of Jesus and Mother Mary. And I also had some demonic experiences during that same time of awakening. There was one experience where I woke up. I think I was about 15 or 16. My alarm went off first thing in the morning. I opened my eyes, and there was in my bedroom, in my house, there was a young man standing next to my bed. And he had black face paint, like Kiss face paint, like the band. And I heard him say, "Satan is my savior." And when I saw him, my first thought was that he was like a guardian angel, but on the negative end of things, he
Right.
was watching me. Then I closed my eyes and I opened them again, and he was gone. So I had all these like little experiences that were um, either demonic in nature or something evil.
Mm-hmm.
Those really ramped up when I was a teenager. I now I understand the terminology of spiritual targeting. So back then I was experiencing some targeting. Then fast forward into my 20s, I realized, being the open-minded questioner, the open-minded skeptic that I am, I was really just asking so many questions about Catholicism, things that didn't make sense to me. And
Mm-hmm.
so I stepped out of Catholicism and Christianity. I was still okay with it. I didn't hate it. I just kind of expanded outside of that box. And I would say that I then got involved in what people would call New Age.
Mm-hmm.
It took me several years to even realize that that's the term for what I was. So for about 20, 25 years, I was an energy healer, an intuitive, spiritual guide, really with a very new age flavor and a very feel good spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2016, I ended up having a really jarring spiritual experience. I had had a couple of experiences in my past that were paranormal, unwanted paranormal experiences. I already mentioned one of those. But in 2016, everything was just blown open. All my my rose colored glasses about New Age were shattered. I
Mm-hmm.
realized that a lot of the things that I was experiencing were not what they appeared to be. And so, in a nutshell, what happened was I went to a spiritual healer, a colleague, to get a second opinion about some things. And I ended up coming under attack by the entity that was working through her.
Oh, wow.
She believed that she was channeling and working with a group, a council of 12 angels.
Mm,
And it turned out that it was actually one very evil entity that was posing as a group of angels. And
mm,
it took about 6 weeks for me to figure out that the attack was coming from her, or from what was connected with her, because she's a lovely person. Like, I didn't want to believe that this had anything to do with her. I also didn't understand trickster entities. At
mm-hmm.
that time, I had really I mean, again, I was still very involved in the feel good new age belief system that, maybe negative things exist, but if I don't think about them, I won't attract them.
Right.
I really believed in the law of attraction.
Mhm.
And so, like, all of my beliefs were just, blown open, exploded, because I realized there was so much more going on than met the eye. And that's so obviously I did get free of that attack. I didn't find many New Age people who would help me. They
Mhm.
all said that it was my unhealed shadow and that I was projecting negativity out into the world. And meanwhile, I actually had one instance where I caught the entity on camera when I was doing an educational video for my students. This orb of light appeared behind me over my shoulder and it was pulsating, and it literally showed up right after I was demonstrating how to burn sage. And so that
Wow.
was one of the things that I realized was these like soft techniques, these like feel good, lovely, popular techniques like just burn sage. That will get rid of all the demons.
Mhm.
Well, it was like this entity was kind of mocking me, saying, "Oh, yeah, well, that didn't do anything because now I'm going to appear on camera."
Right.
And another thing that happened was I tried to warn a friend of mine about working with this particular spiritual teacher. That night, I was woken up in the middle of the night by something. I felt something jerk me. I opened my eyes wide open, and there was this plasma like being hovering over me. So, if you've seen, like in the movies, where there's like a ball of electricity, that's
Mhm.
what I mean by plasma. So it's not exactly fire, it's more like electricity energy. And I
Mhm.
saw this above me, and it actually, even though it didn't have a distinct human form, it actually could shift itself. So I saw it reach down into my shoulders and it tried to yank my soul out of my body.
Wow.
That, out of anything in my entire life, was the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. I literally started hyperventilating. I rolled onto my side. I just like cried and hyperventilated until dawn. Also, because I was confused about what was happening. I didn't
Right.
understand. If I had the knowledge that I do now, I would have responded differently. But I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And then in the meanwhile, I had colleagues who were saying that's not real because they were all into the new age law of attraction stuff.
Mhm.
So naturally, I did get free of that, thank goodness. And then when I was in the thick of it, though, I was so frustrated at the lack of help out there. Yes, I know there are people working in the paranormal world helping people who are having unwanted experiences, but there are not enough. And
Mhm.
I remember one night I got up at like 2 o'clock in the morning because I was trying to go to sleep and I was too afraid to sleep. And so I got up and I went on Google and I was searching for psychic attack, entity attack, demonic attack, like how to get help for this. And I just at that time was not finding the right resources. And I sat there and I said, I know, despite what the new agers are telling me that it's not real, I know that this is real. And I don't believe that I'm the only person experiencing this. I
Yeah.
just know, just in my gut, I know if I'm having this experience, there's got to be a lot of other people having these experiences as well. So if I survive this and when I get through this, I'm going to start some kind of support because the spiritual situation was terrifying and traumatic. But what was doubly terrifying and traumatizing was the lack of support from my community
Of course.
and people not believing me. And I said, even
Mhm.
if I don't know, now I have tons of knowledge. But back then, I just wanted to create support so that
Mhm.
people would know that they were not alone.
Right. Wow. That sounds like such a roller coaster. So, I guess a couple questions I have right off the bat would be like, why do you think that happened? And then what are some steps that you took to help yourself get out of that?
Yeah, so I kind of hear two layers to that question. Like, why did that particular entity attack happen? But then
Mhm.
also, why did all of the different entity attacks happen in my life? So I'm going to
Exactly.
answer both of those.
Yes.
So, why did that attack happen in 2016? I still question that. Like, why did that entity, and to be clear, it was a trickster entity that's called a jinn. So it wasn't a demon. It was another type of entity that is very adept at shape shifting and creating confusion. And a jinn entity is also very good at pretending to be multiple entities. So it can pretend to be a whole room full of fairies or a council of angels or a council of aliens that is going to channel messages through you because you get to be this special spiritual person. And this jinn is like pulling you into this whole trick, right?
Mm.
But the question is, why did it attack me? And yet, other people that it engaged with, it was able to fool. And for some reason, it was not able to fool me. I was able to discern that there was something going on from the beginning. So I can't say for certain, except that for some reason, it was very threatened by me. Whereas with other people, like the particular spiritual teacher that it was working through and all of her followers, it felt pretty confident that it could fool all of them. And so rather than attack those people, it was effectively tricking all of them. For
Mm-hmm.
me, it was an attack. And so I will also add that after that trauma, I did have the ability to, and I have the ability to discern what I call false light, trickster entities. And so I think every one of us has different abilities. Some of your listeners are amazing at like bookkeeping or playing the piano or singing, or maybe you have psychic or spiritual gifts. Like maybe you're really strong in clairvoyance, psychic sight, or like we all have our different areas.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that for whatever reason, maybe because I've always been an open minded skeptic, I'm always looking at things like, is this really what it says that it is?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm always questioning. So maybe there was something about my nature
Mm-hmm.
that I wasn't as fooled as other people. And then as a result of that trauma, it really broke open that spidey sense
Right.
where now I can see that stuff a mile away.
Mm-hmm.
As far as why was I attacked throughout my life, I'm just going to touch on the answer to this part because this could be a whole show in and of itself.
Okay.
I actually have some really dark issues in my ancestry. I found out that my grandmother, who's now deceased, there was an issue in my birth family. I was adopted, so this family didn't raise me, but I got to know them after I grew up. That there was a lot of darkness in the family. One of my uncles committed suicide, unfortunately. He actually had been taken over by, I believe, something demonic, and there was some kind of demonic presence in my biological family. When my birth mother found out that she was pregnant out of wedlock, there was all of this stuff going on in my family with this negative entity that was making my uncle lose his mind.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandmother, she was not a Satanist. A lot of people ask, was she a Satanist? No, she wasn't. She was a, quote, good Catholic, but she was very afraid of what was happening in her family. In the old school Catholic tradition, there's also a lot of shame and embarrassment about pregnancy out of wedlock. I was hidden and kicked out of the family, put up
Mm-hmm.
for adoption, which was very common back in that day. But the spiritual aspect was that she made a vow. She was hoping to move that darkness out of, quote, her family onto me so that, and I mean, obviously I'm not happy about this, but I get it. I feel that like sense of protectiveness that she was experiencing, wanting to protect her family, and how afraid she must have been.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that that is why throughout my whole life, even before I ever met any of my biological family, I believe that is why I was demonically targeted. I had multiple experiences throughout my life where I was attacked by demonic beings and also other types of negative beings. There are just some people who are what I call spiritually targeted, and there are different reasons for being targeted. One reason for being targeted can be that the child is promised to the demonic forces or the dark forces by someone in the family. And I believe that was the case with me. So I've spent many years working on unwinding that. There were things that happened on the day when my grandmother died that definitely were paranormal and very strange. And of course, like, we can never prove that she promised me to the demonic forces. We can never prove that. We can also never prove that the weird things that happened on the day that she died meant anything specific. But I will say that my yard filled with snakes, my house filled with spiders and
Oh my.
scorpions,
Wow.
and it was insane. And that lasted for a few weeks.
Wow. That's terrifying.
Yeah. So there were real spiders all over my house, and I'm a clairvoyant, I'm psychic, so I can see into the psychic realm very easily. And there were also what I call astral spiders. So I was seeing things in the astral realm, spiders, and there were physical spiders. And I was very grounded and aware. I would be like sweeping up the remains of spiders that I had cleared, and I'd be going, these are real spiders. These are physical. This is proof. But the psychic stuff, we can't definitively prove that. We could just say, well, she thought she was seeing things or whatever.
Right.
It was definitely very weird. And there was the night after she died, I woke up in the middle of the night because there was what sounded like a baby being tortured right outside my window. And
Wow.
it was, now I wasn't able to have children in this lifetime, but I know I've heard mothers say that they recognize the different cries of their baby, the hungry cry, the wet diaper cry, I'm in pain, or, those kinds of cries. To me, this cry was, this baby is terrified out of its mind and it is being tortured cry. It
Wow.
was not I want my mommy or I'm hungry. And this went on for about an hour. And I woke up and I thought, are my neighbors having a satanic sacrifice? I mean,
Yeah.
because that's how bad it sounded. I have not heard a baby in my neighborhood since. So it's not
Wow.
like we have a lot of children in the neighborhood. It's, all those logical things. Because remember, I'm an open-minded skeptic. So even when
Right.
something weird happens, I will say, well, what else could that have been? So there
Jeez.
was a lot of weirdness. But and I want to make sure to answer the other part of your question, which was, how did I get rid of the jinn issue? So I will say, if anyone listening to this if they think that they're having a jinn issue, just be very careful. You can't have the same approach with jinn that you do with demons or evil ghosts, evil human souls, that sort of thing, where you just shout at it and say exorcism prayers and then scream at it to leave and use your force of will. Jinn are psychopathic entities that do not respect boundaries. So what I learned over the years, because I've had more than one encounter with different jinn, but what I've learned is that you kind of have to take a backdoor approach and clear them quietly. Probably take too long to get into the specific methods that I used. But for that experience in 2016, I started off just burning frankincense resin to do smoke cleanses. So just to give your audience like a little tool that they could start with, frankincense resin will give you a little bit of relief. It'll help you get your head above water so that you can have a few moments of not being blasted so hard. So then you can figure out what else to do. So frankincense works really well with demons, jinn, and other negative entities. It's probably not going to get rid of the entity forever, It'll
Mhm.
probably, it's like a bug bomb. It'll get rid of it for a few days, and
Mhm.
then the entity comes back. But again, if you want to have instant relief with a real easy tool that's easy to get a hold of and pretty inexpensive, and you don't have to have any spiritual skill sets developed yet, you can just burn the frankincense and you can get some relief. So I started off doing that,
Mhm.
and then I used a candle ritual to reverse, to like pull that entity away from me.
Mhm.
And I've also used some other techniques with Jinn, like going in and doing deep spiritual work to undo past life access points, past life traumas, where the entity was able to take hold. So once you take its access point away, it has a harder time getting in. If you think of it as like a doorway, where like a portal where it can easily just come right into your field. If you figure out what that is, maybe it's an unhealed trauma, it could be addiction, it could be something like a difficult experience in a current life or a past life. If you address that and do the emotional healing and the spiritual healing work, then oftentimes that entity has nothing to grab onto anymore.
That makes sense.
So there's so much to say about clearing. And I guess
Mhm.
the final thing that I'll say is about clearing is that understandably, a lot of people want a magic pill, like a one thing that just makes you better. If you've been having unwanted paranormal experiences for like 20 years and you want to have one clearing with a shaman to fix you forever, while the clearing with the shaman might give you some relief, 9 times out of 10, the problems will ramp up again. So
That
that's
makes sense.
why there's this like multifaceted approach that's needed, working on all these different things. So
Mhm.
not just using the frankincense and hoping that that's your magic pill, but addressing a lot of different things at once,
Right.
including the traumas and
Mhm.
behaviors that might be allowing that sort of thing to come in.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you've identified yourself as psychic, right? So how is it that you receive your messages?
I love talking about the psychic skill sets. So, before I answer your question, I want to just give this word of encouragement to everybody that even though I was born with a certain level of natural ability, because I was having some experiences when I was younger, into my
Mhm.
teenage years, I couldn't access those gifts at will. I couldn't just sit down, ask a question, and get the answer like I can now. That
Mhm.
actually required years of practice.
Mhm.
And so if you tell yourself, well, I'm not psychic, I don't have any of those abilities like that Maya lady. Well, you probably do have, like almost everyone has some level of psychic abilities, but it's a matter of just using them, practicing them regularly. Okay.
Mhm.
So for me, I've always been what one of my past mentors called a bridge. And this is someone who has all of the different clairs. So I'll just go over the clairs for anyone who's not familiar with them. So the first is clairvoyance, which is psychic sight. This is when you might see an image in front of your eyes. You might see an image out in the room, or let's say I'm looking across the room at a person and I see some kind of spiritual activity over them. I've actually had experiences where I've seen people's eyes go black, or I've seen a demonic being superimposed over their face. And I know that they have a demon with them. But the other people in the room didn't see that. They
Mhm.
didn't see it because it was through clairvoyant sight. So that's external clairvoyance. Internal clairvoyance is where you see it in your mind's eye. And for me, it's just so interchangeable. It's sometimes external, it's sometimes internal. And then I also have clairaudience, which is where you hear words, phrases, messages. So it's auditory. And again, it can be like you're hearing it in the room or you hear it inside your mind. And
Mhm.
again, for me, it's very interchangeable. It can be external one moment, internal another moment. But for some, just clarifying, for some people, it's always external or it's always internal. And a lot of people think that when it's internal, they think, oh, that's just my own mind.
Right.
It's not real, but it is real. So then there's, let's see, sight, hearing, clairsentience is psychic feeling. So that's being able to have physical sensations. So how this fits into paranormal is you walk into a room and suddenly you feel chills down your back and you know that there's something paranormal going on in that room, or you feel a cold spot, you feel hot, you feel tingly. Those are all of the psychic touch. And then there's claircognizance, which is psychic knowing. This is where you walk into a room, again, using that example, you walk into a room and you say, I don't see it, I don't hear it, I don't feel it physically, but I just know that there's a spirit in here.
Mm-hmm.
I just know, and I know that they're female, and I know that they're needing help.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the clear cognizance, clear knowing. And then there's also empathy, which sometimes people consider that clear sentience. Empathy is where you can feel the emotions
Mm-hmm.
and feelings of either live people or spirits or beings. So this is where, like, you know that your friend is really sad, even though she's pretending to be fine. You
Mm-hmm.
feel that feeling of sadness. And that also applies to, if someone is a paranormal investigator, for example, they might be able to feel the sadness of the ghost that's trapped in the house. Let's see, I know I've left out some things. So there's also psychic smell and psychic taste, which is
Mm-hmm.
less common, but I have had some experiences with that, and how this psychic smell is really interesting in the paranormal world, because that shows up as it'll smell like something is rotting. If there's a demonic presence, there's this like smell like death or like sulfur. And I know I've left some things out. Also, I get a lot of information through my dreams. So I'll get premonitions of things that are going to be happening. So, like, literally my whole world, I operate with my psychic senses. I joke about how, I literally choose what car insurance I'm going to use. I mean, like, which
Mm-hmm.
mechanic I'm going to go to, or like which rental house I'm going to rent, because I'm going to tune in and get information through all of those clairs as to which is going to be the better choice. Like, oh, you should rent this place because, you're getting messages from the land. The land really wants you there. Or don't rent at this other place because the landlady maybe isn't so nice or whatever.
Right.
So all these things that we think of as mundane life decisions, I make all of my decisions with my intuition. So it's not even
Mm.
separate for me.
Wow. That is so great. So for somebody like myself, I wouldn't go as far as to say that I'm a bridge, but I would say I have had some experiences with multiple clairs, but I haven't like honed in on those gifts. So what are some steps that somebody like me who's just kind of getting into this and acknowledging my gifts, like how can I strengthen them?
Okay, I have a couple of tips, and they're almost so simple that a lot of people go, they hear it and then they don't really do it. But I promise these are the ways to strengthen your spiritual gifts. The first one is to recognize which spiritual gift is your strongest,
Okay.
and start working with that first. Don't
Mm.
worry that you're not strong in every category. Focus on the strongest. The second thing is the advice that a lot of people don't follow, and this is to create more quiet in your life. In today's day and age, everything, like, everybody's too busy, and there's always like a TV playing in the background, music playing, noise, and our mind is going a million miles a minute. And I have found that the more that I've cultivated quiet in my life, and I know those of you who are listening who have like a house full of kids and activities and stuff, that's easier said than done. But if you can carve out a little bit of quiet, I have found that the more quiet that I have cultivated, the more I get psychic information on the regular. The biggest thing that really upscaled my psychic abilities, where I went from getting random information to then being able to do it at will and being able to get tons of details. Like, people can ask me a question and I can just start talking for like 10 minutes, right? I did not used to be able to do that, but I went through years ago, I had to move like twice in like a 2-month period. So
Mhm.
moving costs a lot of money, right? And so I followed the advice of one of my colleagues and I signed up to work on one of the psychic hotlines, which I rarely do anymore. But this is just a really good example of the fact that on the psychic hotlines, you get on there, you don't have any clues or cues. Like the person, they're not giving you anything. Like you don't
Right.
get any background history. They're like, if you're psychic, you should know the answers, right? And
Right.
so I had to get good real fast because I had to like pay for a moving truck, you know? And so like for me, it was a gift because I like had to, it was like a forced up level where like I had to make my mind do this thing. I already had intuitive abilities, but to be able to do it at that level where people were like demanding and mean, you know, like you
Mhm.
didn't give
Right.
them the answers right away. Like, so obviously not everybody is going to go work on the psychic hotline, but I wanted to use that as an example that literally made me so good so fast. So even if you don't go work the whatever named psychic hotline, the fact that you can get together with your friends and you can grab some oracle cards or some tarot cards or a pendulum or just you using your own gifts without tools and ask each other questions and just rapid fire, rapid fire, rapid fire to get used to grabbing the answer. Grab it
Mm.
and do it fast without overthinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that actually sounds like something I heard before. A girl I have on here that she owns like a wellness studio. And she
Mm,
said, like, I don't really, yeah, I'm not disciplined with like my meditation, but just the fact that she interacts with people every day, like clients, it's a way for her to just practice it because she's exposed to so many other people. So I was like, oh, yeah, I guess that
mhm.
makes sense.
And the more you practice it, the better. So, even with all of the little mundane things that are happening in your life,
Mhm.
all the different decisions that you're making, which one will be better, this one or this one?
Mhm.
And even if you don't have a way to prove that the answer was correct or incorrect, just the asking process and the grabbing onto the answer, that process will help you get better and
Okay.
stronger. Mhm.
Great. I'm excited to put that into practice.
Mhm.
So you had mentioned that you grew up, as a Catholic and then you kind of pivoted, now that you're more involved in the supernatural or paranormal.
Mhm.
So would you say that like you still really believe in that at heart, or has that like changed your mind when it comes to like religion in general? Like what are your thoughts around that today?
Yeah. So, are you asking if I still believe in the religion of my upbringing, or are you asking if I still practice New Age, or all of the above?
Well, let's go with all of the above.
Okay. 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 So, I actually, about 6 months ago, tried going back to the Catholic Church just because I live in a small town where there's literally like nothing to do. There's no community. And
Mhm.
I was like, I have got to get out of the house. Now, I am really open minded. So I was able to get something out of the services where I would listen and I'd be like, well, I don't agree with pretty much anything that they're saying if we're going to be specific, like, do you specifically believe in this? No, I don't believe in it. But if I expanded my view, because like they would say a particular prayer and I'd be like, well, I don't agree with any of that, but I do agree with the general concept of this prayer being, may all, like, I could reinterpret the prayer to my own meaning to be, may all beings on the planet be freed from dark forces.
Mhm.
And so I would kind of just like take the general concept and I would just sit and respectfully pray, like I would respect what they were saying and respect that I didn't agree with it, and then kind of have my own broader perspective interpretation of it.
Mhm.
So, I, from a traditional Catholic point of view, I would definitely not be considered Catholic
Mhm.
because there are various like prime parts of Catholicism I just don't believe anymore. And I can't make myself believe those things. It's kind of like when you were growing up and you had like a pair of jeans that your mom bought you and then you grew out of them, nothing is going to make you fit back into them. You might not hate those jeans, but you just are like, there's literally no way I'm going to be able to even fit them over one leg ever again. So I did get some things from going to a couple of services, but I definitely I don't fit in that box anymore. One of the things that I really appreciate about Catholicism is the recognition that what I call dark forces exists, whereas I spent many years in the New Age where there was a lot of denial. Now, there's so many flavors within New Age, so I can't put that blanket over everybody in New Age, but there is a very predominant belief in New Age that negative entities and negative energies don't exist. So one of the things that was very comforting when I went to a couple of Catholic services was that, oh, they actually recognize that this stuff can be a problem and that we need to pray or do ritual or at least recognize. And I really do like prayer of any faith. And I think that it does make a difference. It's like whether you call it prayer, intention, focusing, manifestation, ritual, you could use all sorts of words. I think it's all the same thing. I really believe in it. I think that when we focus our intention on bringing something into reality, for example, helping to free people from oppression, from dark forces, I think sending out that prayer and that intention is helpful on the planet. So am I still Catholic? I stopped being Catholic many years ago, and then I dipped my toe in recently, and I was like, yeah. I respect it all, but I just don't. I think, gosh, if they knew what I really believed, they probably would. I don't know.
Maybe
But
excommunication. No.
oh yeah, they definitely. Well, the fact that I call myself a psychic, the Catholic religion, generally speaking, does not approve of like anything psychic, mediumship, connecting with loved ones on the other side, which is part of the work that I do. They consider that like very bad. When I walked in to one of the services, there were little booklets in the back of the church, and one of them was about like the evils of going to psychics. And I just looked at it and I just walked by and I went, okay, that's fine, because I'm going to still sit down and enjoy what there is to enjoy. Again, that open-minded skeptic part of me that like, I can still sit there and enjoy what there is to enjoy. I have more frustration with the New Age path. I have like more emotional, like, grinding of teeth over the New Age stuff because I care about people and I get very like that part of me that wants justice and help and assistance for people gets very frustrated when I hear person after person tell me that they went to a healer who told them that their situation wasn't real or that they were drawing it to themselves through their own negativity. And those are beliefs that are very common in New Age. Some people would still consider me New Age because I love my crystals and my essential oils and like all those kinds of things. But there are definitely a lot of the belief systems that I don't agree with anymore.
Well, that's a good segue into something else I was going to ask. Like, what are some warnings that you might be able to give and or like steps we can take to like protect ourselves about things that are harmful?
One of the biggest warnings that I would want to give to all people of all, whether they practice a particular faith or New Age or just all the different flavors out there. My warning would be that not everything is what it seems. There's a lot of trickster energy out there. And what I've come to realize is it's way more prevalent than most people would like to believe. Here's what I mean. It's very popular now to work with spirit guides. And now I'm not anti-spirit guide. I love working with spiritual allies. I think it's really difficult living on planet Earth. And if we can have some allies, that's great. But there are so many trickster spirits out there, whether they're demons, whether they're jinn, whether they're earthbound spirits having a fun time messing with you. There are so many people who thought they were working with a spirit guide and it turned out to be something else. So my warning would be don't get sucked into fear and be like freaked out about everything that shows up. So don't go to that extreme, but literally question everything. If you have any kind of spiritual experience, because like your listeners have probably had so many different, perhaps amazing experiences. And I don't want to burst anyone's bubble, but I want to just encourage you to literally question everything. If you had what you thought was a positive experience, a benevolent experience, maybe it truly was, but take some time to really question, was that spirit guide or that Aunt Sally who showed up to visit you? Ask those important questions. Do you think that it really was that benevolent experience? A big red flag, since we don't have time to get into all the false light, all the trickster stuff, the biggest indicator, the biggest red flag is if your gut instincts, if you get a weird feeling, like, well, I want to believe that that was Aunt Sally or Grandma so-and-so that visited me. But deep down, you just have this weird feeling like something isn't right.
Mm-hmm.
That is your answer.
Yeah.
So that brings us back, Alyssa, to our developing intuitive skills. The more you can develop your intuitive skills, your psychic skills, your gut feelings, the better off you will be, because then you're going to have more confidence when something spiritual or paranormal happens.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be able to depend on and trust your gut feeling. Like, I know that that was my deceased father who showed up, because I trust my inner feelings. I trust my guidance. I know that it wasn't a trickster. Or I had a weird feeling, like there was just something off. It didn't really feel like him. I want to believe that it was him, but my spidey sense tells me that something is off. So the biggest warning would be, don't trust everything that shows up.
Mm-hmm.
There are way more tricksters out there than we'd like to believe. And the answer to that is pay attention, trust your gut, and take the time. It takes years, but take the time to gradually develop your intuitive abilities.
I love that. That's great. So, do you have any plans for yourself? Like, where do you see yourself? Do you have any projects or anything coming up in the next, I don't know, say 5 years or so?
Yes. So I am writing my third book right now. My first book, called Darkness Disguised as Light, is more my origin story of the psychic attack that I very quickly described in our podcast today from 2016, because there's so many layers to it. I can't possibly even describe it in an hour. So that's the first book. The second book is the Psychic Attack Sourcebook, which came out last year. And that helps people understand all of the layers and levels of identifying psychic attack and why someone might be targeted, and a whole bunch of different tools and steps for clearing it. And now that I'm on book 3, I'm focusing on a more specific niche within the area of psychic protection. And this might be surprising to some people, but I've gotten a lot of students and clients over the years who've been harmed by spiritual teachers who were misusing their gifts and their powers. And the more that you know about red flags and what to watch out for, the more you can avoid accidentally getting sucked in. Because let's face it, even people who are intelligent, grounded people get sucked in by people who are master manipulators. And there are even abuses going on in this new age and spiritual field that are not as blatant as the obvious guru abuser that we might think of that you hear about on the news. There are a lot more in between subtleties. So I've got a few more months left on writing the third book, all about abusive and predatory spiritual teachers. And then after that, I'll have to decide which book comes later. As far as my work with clients and students, that is going to stay steady and stable. I have an academy, Spiritual Empowerment Academy, where I work with people who are struggling with any levels of unwanted spiritual activity. So this could be people who are oversensitive empaths who are just struggling with living on the planet, all the way to people who are being brutally attacked by entities. So we have an established group of people who are amazing spiritual warriors who have gone from being attacked on a daily basis to now being totally free free of those issues. And that academy it's open all the time. And so we have new members gradually join, and then they mix and mingle with the people who've gone through the process who are now free. And it is this like synergy, is this amazing environment. That group is going to keep going for, I don't know, it's been going for 7 years now, and it's going to just keep on going.
Wow.
So that's a little bit of what I have going on. My YouTube channel, I'm going to keep doing that. I do at least one free class a month, Psychic Protection Sanctuary, all about the basics. And then in the academy, that's where we get into the specifics of like how to kick the demons to the curb.
Okay, great. And where can we find your books?
Oh, yes. You can find those on Amazon.com and also on Audible.
Oh, perfect. Okay, I'm going to have to get those as soon as we're done on the call.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of audiobooks, and
Me
I was
too.
so excited. I was so excited to have those done last year.
Yeah. Did you read them, or did somebody else like read them for you?
Yeah, it was a hard decision because there's pros and cons either way. And I knew that if I found someone else to do it, it would get done a lot faster. So I made that decision. Eventually, I'll probably read one of my future books, but
Okay.
I needed to get it out into the world. I was really busy with working, doing all the other things and writing the next books. But I had a different narrator for each of my first 2 books, and they both did a great job.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining me. I know you have a lot going on. So just to carve out an hour of your time to talk with me, I really appreciate it. Is there any final thoughts that you want to end on that you want the listener to know that we haven't covered?
Yeah, I might have mentioned these things before, but I'll just mention it again, just as we wrap up, that there are 2 different places that I would suggest for people who are looking for support. The first place would be the free Facebook group, and that is called Psychic Protection Sanctuary. And remember, if you're joining a free group, your expectations will need to be that it is a free group. There's support in there. But if you're dealing with like mega serious spiritual warfare, you probably need more mentoring from me and from the group program. And that you can find that on my website, which is psychicprotectionsanctuary.com, and click on Work with Maya.
Amazing. I will also keep your links in the show notes as well. Yeah, of course. All right.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. I'm so grateful that you came out tonight.